The movie begins in a carnival with Mrs. Kim and her family having fun celebrating her son's birthday. Jae-hyuk, a former professor with a doctorate in biochemistry who now works as a pharmaceutical sales representative, joins the family as a favor for Dr. Kim. Later that evening, when Jae-hyuk gets home, he sees his brother, Ja-pil, a police investigator, waiting for him. They have a small argument when his brother asks him about his new job and tells him that he feels responsible for it. Jae-hyuk is still angry about how his brother gave him bad advice in the stock market that made him lose his previous job and life savings. He then tells his brother not to see him anymore and stop calling him his brother. After that, he goes inside his home and sees his family eating what Ja-pil gave them. Jun-woo, Jae-hyuk's son, later asks if they're going to the theme park for his birthday. Jae-hyuk answers that celebrating birthdays is a luxury they can't afford. Jung-seon, Jae-hyuk's wife, then argues with him about her getting a job, but Jae-hyuk disagrees as he feels it's an embarrassment for him. Jae-hyuk explains his situation and why he gets so irritated lately. He tells his wife to be grateful that they're still alive. On the other hand, Jae-pil discusses with his colleague at Chua Pharmaceutical, where his brother works. During their conversation, his coworker accidentally talks about someone who's stocking the pharmaceutical shares. Ja-pil gets mad and asks his colleague who's been buying the shares and orders him to track them down, see what they look like, and why they purchased the shares. The next day, Jae-pil visits his fiancée, Yeon-ju, and asks her for money. Yeon-ju tells him that he has already screwed up his brother's life and is trying to do the same for her. Ja-pil then explains that he's doing this because he has to make it up to his brother and owes it to his sister-in-law, niece, and nephew that he'll take any risk for his brother's family. Yeon-ju then meets with Jae-hyuk and tells him that Ja-pil is still trying to borrow money for stocks. Jae-hyuk then tells her to leave him before it's too late because she deserves better. However, she convinces him to give his brother a chance because he's still his brother. Jae-hyuk disagrees because things are horrible and he doesn't treat him as a brother anymore. Later that night, when Jae-hyuk goes to drink water, he hears people eating, and when he goes to a room, he finds his family eating. On the other hand, a couple goes for a jog when the guy takes a leak in the river and finds a dead body. In the morning, the police and Ja-pil investigate the dead body. Later on, with further investigation, they wondered what happened to the body because it's impossible to reduce skin and bones overnight. The forensic pathologist then says 2 more corpses from Jamsil and Bunding came in that morning. A week ago, they had the bodies of a family from Gangwon province. Not long after, authorities find more dead bodies drifting down the stream. Jung-seon wakes Jae-hyuk to watch the news about 58 dead bodies and counting. But despite the announcement, Jae-hyuk still asks for his wife to prepare his golf gear and he'll return to work. At the same time, Jae-pil gets orders from the police station to go to Gangwon-do because they found out that the family of the dead woman they found yesterday is also dead. The captain orders him to go to the stream, hoping that he'll find a toxic substance or any potential contaminators in the water. On the golf course, Jae-hyuk and his colleagues are talking about the current situation when they notice Dr. Kim, who's been drinking a lot of water. Jae-hyuk asks him if he's dehydrated, but Dr. Kim then tells them that he's not dehydrated, but he's been like that for a few days now. They then went to another spot in the golf course when Dr. Kim saw a lake and rushed over to jump. Dr. Kim feels uncontrolled in his body and asks for help, but when Jae-hyuk reaches him, he sees him drowning. Jae-hyuk then runs to save Dr. Kim, but when he lifts his body, he's shocked when he sees that Dr. Kim's body already looks like a decaying body. On the other hand, Jae-pil is in Gangwon-do and investigates the water stream and inquires about any chemical factory or waste plant nearby. The locals say that the stream is off limits to any industrial infrastructure. Ja-pil later finds out from the local police that the result of the investigation is severe malnutrition, so they said that the reason for the death was suicide due to financial hardships. When Jae-hyuk gets home, he finds his family eating and drinking a lot of water again, and then he angrily asks his wife why they're like that. Joo-moo later says that their aunt Hui-jung died. Also, Wheon-jun and Gan-jun later that night. Jae-pil spends the rest of the night inside his car because no one in Gangwon-do offers him a room. He's deeply asleep and doesn't notice people walking past his car. The following day, when Jae-pil wakes up, he finds more dead bodies in the stream near where his car is parked. Seeing a series of dead bodies in different places alerts the government, and they believe that the Ministry of Health and Welfare should handle this matter. The government is unsure about what's happening because there's no other explanation for a full-fledged pandemic. So they decided to set up a crisis control task force and put the cause of death at the top of the list. They also said that until the exact cause of death is known, the press shouldn't discuss any theories or hypotheses. The government also learned that the family and friends' testimonies revealed that the deceased showed an abnormal increase in appetite without gaining much weight. They will all show a sudden drop in appetite followed by an excessive thirst lasting for 2 to 3 days leading to death. On the other hand, J. Pill gets a call from Detective Park, who tells him there are no substances, just plankton, water-based organisms, and larvae. Starting with Seoul, dead bodies with similar signs of malnutrition are found every morning in rivers across the country. The police have trouble understanding the cause of the sudden deaths, as all the victims don't show any physical symptoms but look gruesome as soon as they jump into the water. One victim is found dead in his bathtub with unidentifiable worm-like organisms swimming next to his dead body. When officials from the Ministry of Health and Welfare see the worm, they discover it's a parasitic horsehair worm. These worms usually live on insects, but they have changed into a new form that lets them infect humans. The Minister of Health and Welfare still can't understand the situation, so Dr. Wong explains how this organism used to make grasshoppers as its host and live in its body. Dr. Wong also says that the victims must have come in contact with water containing the larva and that it must have entered the victim's body through the mouth or anus. He also explains that when the larvae get inside the body, they'll attach themselves to their organs until they're fully mature insects. Because the human host unknowingly supplies them with nutrients, the insect will grow. When it reaches its breeding period, the host will feel an excessive thirst until it eventually jumps into the water. That's when the worms leave the body. Once the worms leave the body, the host will enter shock and die, which is a sign of cachexia. The minister then realizes that it's the reason why the corpses look like they suffered malnutrition. Dr. Wang then reveals that if these worms are the reason for the deaths, they face a severe crisis because many people visit the streams or rivers during summer. After collecting larvae, Yen Ju examines them and confirms Dr. Wang's explanation. They then immediately released an announcement at the Crisis Control Center asking anyone who has been in contact with fresh water to visit the nearest hospital for an immediate checkup. Jae Hyuk rushes to his family as soon as he hears the news. He finds them drinking water again and asks his wife if she took their children to the river in the summer. Young Seon then says she took them when Jae Hyuk was too busy. She also said she went there with her recently deceased friend. Jae Hyuk then asks her and their kids to get dressed, for he'll bring them to the hospital. In the hospital, the doctors see the worms inside the intestines of a human, and the minister asks if they can remove them. The doctors say that it's impossible because the worms fuse themselves entirely with the inner walls of the intestine like a leech, so removing them will be challenging. Dr. Wong suggests that since they can't physically extract them because of possible bleeding, they can only remove them through drug-induced necrosis. The minister orders putting together a patient group and conducting a clinical trial for the vermicide, which is a cure for parasites, but Young Seon disagrees. She argues with the minister that these people aren't lab animals to do a test, but the minister says they need to find a cure or they will all die. Later in the emergency room, one patient named Ju Hui was experiencing severe stomach pain, but no analgesic was working. Jung Seon asks Ju Hui's mother what happened, and then she says that because her daughter has the same symptoms, she gave her some vermicides. Then, minutes later, her daughter started rolling on the floor screaming. After the doctors try everything they can about the situation, Ju Hui still dies. The Ministry of Health and Welfare announces that patients suffering the symptoms should refrain from taking vermicides. They also ask the victims not to go near the waterside under any circumstances, for it would be suicide. As of now, the authorities will strictly prohibit access to any watercourses, reservoirs, cisterns, or puddles containing a body of water until further notice. Jung Seon, on the other hand, still argues with the minister and convinces him to quarantine all infected. Still, the minister says this isn't contagious, so they don't have to quarantine. On the other hand, Jae-pil sees the chief crying and talking about what he saw and how he pretended that he didn't see anything. Jae-pil cuts what the chief says when he receives a phone call that Jae-hyuk's family is infected. While at Jae-hyuk's home, he struggles to take control of his family, which is in desperate need of water. Due to the chaos caused by people running to get water and going to hospitals, the government declared a national health emergency. The government says that the horseworm epidemic had caused the most shocking and deadly damage of any crisis or disaster they have faced. They also announced that the confirmed deaths had already surpassed 3,000 and that they have 100,000 confirmed cases of infection nationwide. Back in Gangwon-do, Jae-pil talks to the chief again about what he saw. The chief says it was the spring right before summer started, and he couldn't sleep, so he came out for a dip, and that's when he saw some strangers. He thought they were trying to get rid of their sick dogs because they were in such terrible shape. He also said he didn't tell the police because tourist season starts in a few days, and he couldn't risk losing a year's money. So he collected the dogs' corpses and buried them in the mountain. Then came the holiday season, and the tourists flocked by, but nothing happened. Until a few months after summer, authorities found Kim's family drowning in the stream. He knew right then that something horrible was happening, but he was worried about ruining the village's reputation. In the meantime, Jae-pil's colleague calls him about tracking down those that bought Chuo Farm's shares. Meanwhile, the minister investigates one patient who took a vermicide, and his thirst went away. The doctor in charge of the victim then says he has slight malnutrition, but the horsehair worm has become necrotic. They find out that the working vermicide is named Windazole, manufactured by the company where Jae-hyuk works. Crisis Control Center then announces that they have identified a cure that causes the country to go insane to get a hold of the drug. Unfortunately, because many people are looking for this medicine, pharmacies run out of supply in less than a day. On the other hand, Jae-hyuk rushes to every pharmaceutical store to find the treatment. After seeing people swarming the stores, he goes to the company and asks for the cure. Unfortunately, they have no stocks left, for it had poor sales causing them to discontinue the production. Government officials contacted the pharmaceutical company making Windazole, which is Chuo Pharmaceuticals, and demanded that they increase supply, because if not for the medicine, they would have a much greater catastrophe. Not long after, the ministry announced the isolation of the infected families because they worried that they might infect their families and they'll lose control of the situation. The next day, while waiting for the medicine to arrive, the minister comes to work to tell everyone the company fails to make a single pill. He reveals that since an investment company bought Chuo Pharmaceuticals, they needed to manage the devices to make the drug well. Public hearings then follow as the government requests the company to reveal the drug's composition and ask other manufacturers to make the medicine. Unfortunately, they can only do that once their patent expires, because the government had no legal grounds to force the company to disclose the drug's composition. The government blackmailed him that the government would guarantee very generous support and benefits. Still, if they rejected their offer, the government would dispatch auditors to conduct an audit on Chuo Pharmaceutical. On the other hand, Jae-hyuk's boss calls him, telling him that he has the medicine, so Jae-hyuk rushes to their company to get it. He manages to get a hold of a box of the drug. Still, when he sees a baby infected, he gives some to the mother until one of the people swarming the gates of their company sees him. The people immediately crowded him until the police came. After the people left, he saw that the commotion crushed the pills into the ground. In the meantime, Jae-pil meets with one of his co-workers and asks about the investigation. Then he finds proof that this is all planned by people at Chuo Pharmaceuticals. He finds a former member of Cho's research team and threatens him. Then, the researcher tells the whole truth. The researcher reveals that the scientists at CHOA learned about the parasite Yangasi a few years ago. They thought that if they could find the protein that controls the brain, they might be able to find a cure for Alzheimer's and other brain diseases. The team made a mutant version that could only live in mammals. They were about to finish their research when an investor bought the company and removed the research team. So some researchers got mad and got together to make a plan to change the stock prices. They then purchased a lot of stocks, and after putting away 10,000 packets of the drug, they let the parasite out. Because of this, many people who went on vacation at the rivers got sick during the summer. Then, to boost stock prices, one of the researchers pretended that the drug could treat him. Given this information, Jae-pil calls Jae-hyuk and they both go to the storage. The researcher admitted to having kept away the rest of the drugs. When Jae-hyuk finally is about to get a hold of the medicine, someone locks the door to the storage and sets the building on fire. Jae-hyuk and Jae-pil leave, but the man who gave Jae-pil the information gets killed by a mysterious man, who turns out to be the researcher who said Windazole worked. Then, all of the drugs burn down. Jae-pil then finds out that the murdered researcher had been the head of the research team and was a close friend of the CEO. Jae-pil learns that the other researchers had already run away overseas and that the leader of the group was staying behind to see how things panned out. Thus, the entire plan was premeditated and taken out by the CEO and researchers. Meanwhile, the CEO suggests that the government buy the company in its entirety, allowing them to find out the drug's composition and make more of it for the rapidly increasing number of patients. The CEO's price is unreasonable at 5 billion won, and most government officials are against the idea. Still, the Prime Minister says there's no other option and is about to sign a contract when they inform him of the scam and arrest the CEO. Jae-hyuk is in despair when he suddenly realizes, based on his knowledge of chemistry, he doesn't need the whole windazole. That will be enough to treat his family if he can create a drug with the same active ingredient as windazole. Other people join in on the plan, and pharmaceutical companies hastily create an effective drug that treats everyone. The movie ends with Jae-hyuk and his family spending time in an amusement park. Jae-hyuk then suggests they go overseas, preferably with many drugstores. Still, his wife laughs and asks if he's worried that there might also be Yen-gacy in other countries. Jae-hyuk then smiles but suddenly freezes as they see a dead body floating in New York Harbor.